Hey everybody, what's going on? Helllight here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I found myself wanting to talk about Heimerdinger in general. I think that a lot of people are frustrated with Heimerdinger support. I think it's a very odd place for this character to finally start seeing consistent professional play, and I think a lot of people are very frustrated with seeing it in their own games because of how unfun Heimerdinger support in general is. And I think a lot of people are sort of saying, well, Heimerdinger support isn't that great, but he's a mid laner who's shown up in the bot lane, and this is always a frustrating place for basically any place, right? We can all remember when Brand support first started getting played, Zyra support first started getting played. Those kinds of things are very frustrating in general for players to deal with, and Heimerdinger is just the latest in a string of mages to start seeing play in the bot lane. However, I think that this doesn't go far enough to the heart of the problem, which is that Heimerdinger's design is really, really terrible in general. I don't think this is a problem with Heimerdinger support specifically. I think this is a problem with Heimerdinger as a champion. His kit design is doing the best it can given the sort of restrictions it's being forced to use, and given the fact that these restrictions are generally very unfun for anybody to deal with in general. So today I wanted to actually go through and do another champion design breakdown for Heimerdinger specifically, and talk about why his kit, though very competently made, is designed around a flawed idea. Now, when you look at Heimerdinger's kit design and all of his abilities, it sort of makes sense how all of this is supposed to work, of course, right? Heimerdinger is a character who's based around his turrets. His entire build is placing turrets and then using his other abilities to call out priority targets for them, right? The turret auto attacks don't do that much damage on their own, but they have a charged attack that does a lot more damage. He can charge it fast by firing his missiles, which if multiple missiles hit the same target, he can do a lot more damage and charge a lot more of the turret's attacks faster. If he hits the grenade on the sweet spot, he charges the turret attacks instantly, and then his ultimate, of course, just allows him to modify his abilities for whatever he happens to need at the time, whether that's more damage, more utility, or a super turret that he can then use with his other abilities to really give it a lot of extra value. That all sort of makes a lot of sense. Even Heimerdinger gaining bonus movement speed around his turrets tells you that the turrets are the most important part of Heimerdinger's kit. However, I think that basing the character around turrets is the problem and is the biggest flaw with Heimerdinger's design. First, this is because turrets are static. Heimerdinger can't really do much of anything with these turrets once they're placed, other than consume another turret kit to place a turret in a different area. And what this means is that Heimerdinger is sort of bound to wherever his turrets happen to be. He has to be very careful with leaving them because he doesn't have that much ability to do anything outside of them, even to the point where his kit doesn't have, even though his turrets can be off cooldown, he still can't place a turret unless he has an available turret kit. Now, this makes a lot of sense to a certain extent, right? Wanted to prevent the feels bad moment of Heimerdinger's turrets have an extremely long cooldown, which means that Heimer then can't place 3 turrets when he needs them. He's sort of stuck on this, place one, wait 15 seconds, place another one, wait 15 seconds, by which point the first one's already been killed. So the turret kit design makes sense by allowing Heimerdinger to save turrets and rapidly deploy them when he needs them. That said, though, it does end up in a situation in which Heimerdinger is not really incentivized to leave his turrets very quickly because of how valuable they are to him. He has to wait on his turret kit cooldown, and that means that wherever he's set up, he sort of has to stay there. This also then means that Heimerdinger has some feels bad moments in the middle of teamfights. If he's got his turret lineup set up, and then the teamfight moves away from the turrets, well, Heimerdinger's sort of scrambling to recover. Now, this does mean that Heimer has to be a little bit careful about when and where he uses his turret kits. Admittedly, it still contributes to a static environment where Heimer is strong in this area and weak in all other areas, and as a result, he just doesn't feel very good in the sort of modern-day League of Legends landscape where teamfights tend to be very fluid, they tend to be moving quite rapidly, and there tends to be a lot going on. Heimerdinger can feel left in the dust because his turrets just aren't doing that much for him, and he's forced to depend on his other abilities. And this also has the added problem of not only a feels bad moment for Heimerdinger, but a feels bad moment for people who have to deal with Heimerdinger. Heimer creates what I like to affectionately refer to as the Donger zone, where he's got his 3 turrets all in range to support each other, as well as himself in that area. And an enemy champion can't reasonably enter this zone without taking an excessive amount of damage from the turrets for free. Heimerdinger doesn't have to tell the turrets to attack champions. If he's auto-attacked you once in lane, the turrets will automatically prioritize you the second you draw in range. Obviously, if you attack him as well, they'll start hitting you as well. And what this means then is that Heimerdinger is basically guaranteed safe in the Donger zone. If you're a melee champion, you realistically can never actually step up into range. If you're a ranged champion, you have to try and slowly kill the turrets one at a time, which because of the way in which Heimerdinger's Q works, he has turret kits. So even if you kill one turret, he can just use another turret kit to immediately place the turret down that you just killed. If you kill that one, he has another turret kit to replace it. It's just a never-ending cycle of whack-a-mole. And this means that the enemy champion is basically stuck in the goldfish zone for the entirety of the lane. They can't reasonably interact with Heimerdinger, nor can they realistically push out, because to push out, they would have to move past Heimerdinger's turrets, which means they have to either kill them or just tank the turret damage, which you're never going to want to do. And so this means that Heimerdinger will always be pushing in on them, and that there's realistically no way for them to reasonably interact with Heimerdinger himself. They spend their entire laning phase interacting with Heimerdinger's turrets, which is not particularly exciting or engaging, or realistically what any enemy champion actually wants to be doing. And this means that the lane just becomes uninteresting for both Heimerdinger and his opponent. Heimerdinger sits safely ensconced in his turret lineup, basically not pressing any buttons outside of trying to go for arbitrary poke, and the enemy champion just last hits and tries to dodge Heimerdinger poke for the entire laning phase. That's not particularly exciting or engaging for either player, but it's because Heimerdinger doesn't have the ability to realistically outplay anybody. He stands in the middle of his turrets and says, "Come to me where I'm at my strongest and where there's a lot of guaranteed value that I can find to deal with you." I also think that the power budget of a lot of Heimerdinger's abilities is a little out of whack, and this I think is best seen with his ultimate, which I don't necessarily dislike his ultimate. I think there's some degree of fun in being able to select an ability to have massively increased power, but generally speaking, Heimerdinger is living and dying by his turrets and his grenade specifically. Missiles are sort of nice, but they're more of an obnoxious part of Heimerdinger's kit more than they do anything else, and this is seen in his ultimate. You never see Heimerdinger use RW because of just how easy it is for enemy champions to simply avoid it. Conversely, RE is exceptionally strong and one of the major ways in which Heimerdinger finds value, and I think that RQ is a very powerful ability for Heimerdinger to have as well. And it just ends up being one of those things that then demonstrates that Heimerdinger doesn't have that much going on for him besides the static place where he decides, I'm going to be very strong in this place specifically, and there's not a lot that you're going to be able to do to challenge me in that zone. I would love to see Riot take another look at Heimerdinger and try to get him away from the turret-based gameplay. Admittedly, he did used to be worse. Prior to his last VGU, Heimerdinger's kit design was significantly worse designed, but I think in general that there's a lot that's still not very good. I think this is about as good as Riot could have gotten with the turret-based design by saying the charge attacks are realistically where the majority of your damage is. If you want the charge attacks, you have to be able to use your other abilities to get those charge attacks, or use your ultimate to get a turret that deals much more damage but also charges its attack faster. Like, I think that's all a fine design by saying, yeah, Heimer's still turret-based, but you have to be able to use your other abilities. The problem, though, is the turret-based playstyle of forcing Heimer to remain in a single area, in a single safe area, and forcing Heimerdinger to not be able to respond to enemy things as much as he has to sort of preempt them by saying, I'm going to put down a bunch of turrets immediately. And so, in general, I don't think that there's any further that Riot can reasonably take this concept. I think that the idea of Heimerdinger having a bunch of turrets and being the turret champion is kind of neat, but not necessarily that interesting or engaging from a play against standpoint, and I'd love to see them take another try. I would argue that Riot could try with Heimerdinger having a single turret that he basically sits by and maintains and manipulates only the big turret and can then reposition it as he needs, which would maybe make him feel a little bit more flexible, but then you run into the Torbjorn problem where the character is nothing without their turret and everything with their turret, and if you neutralize the turret, then the character ceases to exist, right? There are still issues, I think, in general with Heimerdinger's kit, and I don't think, having not spent a lot of time thinking about how I would fix him, I'm not sure that necessarily this is an unfixable problem, but for the moment at least, I think that Riot are going to pretty severely nerf Heimerdinger in the short run in order to eventually balance him for the future and try to find a better way of making his kit function. But those are my thoughts about the character. So in general, what I'm saying is I don't think it's support Heimerdinger in particular that's the problem. I think in general it's Heimerdinger has a bad design and needs a VGU. But let me know what your thoughts on that are down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.